Before we started, I took 50 healthy patients between the age of 58 and 73, 25 men, 25 women, all healthy, all good weight, very minimal health problems. I selected these people because they were healthy, and we tested their biomarkers, especially had to do with the toxins. We tested 109 different toxins, and in those group of 50, we found 91 of them. And these were at levels that were at high critical levels. Mind you, the reference range we used for the toxins were the government NHANES reference ranges. So how much glyphosate, Roundup, is normal to have in our body? 0, right? It's supposed to be 0. The government says you can have 7 micrograms per gram, which is a lot. But we use the government's reference ranges to define toxicology, because what we want to do is show even the traditional world that we have a significant problem here. Of the patients we tested, the patient out of 109 who had the most had 33, the patient who had the least was 3, and on average, they had 13.2 toxins that were in the high critical range. Not only were in the high critical range, but 40% of them were in 2 standard deviations above the high critical range. That means instead of 7 in glyphosate, they were at 20. And that was the vast majority, that was the number one thing that we found in the patients we studied was Roundup. 74% of our patients had that toxins. Of those, half of them had them in 2 standard deviations above the critical range. How many patients had toxins this year? Were free of toxins? None. This is the first year that I didn't find anyone who had 0. We then took 5 men and 5 women, healthy people, aged between 60 and 70, and then we had 4 controls. At the time, we didn't know how much our protocol addition to the TP would do, so we ran through 4 people, basically with the same protocol that Kiprov used, but in our data included group, we added all the lifestyle, nutrients, and medications. Before we started, as I mentioned, we checked 200 biomarkers. This is how many biomarkers, this is how many of the tests were abnormal out of 200 in each patient. And to be included in the study, they had to be abnormal on both the first and the second test. They had to be above the level that the government said. 54 was one lady, 25% of her biomarkers were in the high critical range. And even the person who was the best was only 10%, but still 10%. So we looked at all these different biomarkers of aging, and I did not cherry pick these markers to show you. I picked these markers because I felt these were the ones you would be most interested in and most knowledgeable with, because we have many of them that I'm sure, like we have the glycans that Dr. Martinez was talking about. I didn't know he was going to give that lecture. I would have put those on theirs as well. But we looked at the biomarkers of the immune system. This is the same thing that Kiprov did, is look at the T cells and the B cells and the natural killer cells. We also looked at the oxidative stress markers. We looked at 12 different oxidative markers. I'm showing you the 8 hydrodeguanine, and I'm also showing you the myeloperoxidase. 2 different type of oxidation effects. One of them is the direct effect on the DNA. The other is the enzymatic response to oxidative stressors in your periphery. We looked at inflammation. We looked at uric acid. We looked at C-reactive protein. We looked at interleukin 1B, 6, 8, 10, but I'm going to show you guys interleukin 8 and tumor necrosis factor alpha. And we also looked at longevity markers like clotho protein. We looked at NAD intracellular, and we looked at beta-galactase, which is a measurement of senescence in every person. But we also looked at the toxins. I looked at heavy metals, all of them. I'm showing you 4 of them that we all know: lead, mercury, aluminum, and arsenic. And by the way, of all the toxins we tested on people, the top 5, number 1 was glyphosate, number 2 was lead, number 3 was mercury, number 4 was BPA, and number 5 was arsenic. So that's why I have those included in this, because they were the top 5 toxins in our group. We looked at the pesticides. We looked at all the DDTs and all their sisters. We looked at the phenols, and the one I'm showing you is BPA, because we all know that, and the triclosan. And then the mycotoxins, we looked at 1 from every category: the aflatoxins, the ochratoxins, and the ZEO. We looked at the phthalates. I showed you the 2 most common that you guys seeing all the food particles, and then we looked at volatile compounds, the byproducts of petroleum. We were on a phone call, Dr. Anderson and I and Dr. Shi, and we were going over the data as the 2-week numbers came out. And Paul Anderson and I were like, holy shit, these numbers were huge. We're not talking about 2%, 3%, we're talking 50, 80, 90, 100%. We were marveling on what have we got here, what have we done? And Dr. Shi, who's the data scientist, is like, you guys are idiots. We're like, what's wrong? And he's like, you're looking at the numbers, you're not looking at the sign. I'm like, well, they're all going down, Jen. He goes, that's my point. Every patient we treated went down significantly. And he can say, because of that, not only did we take out the 100 that we were testing, we were taking out all 144,000 that are available, whether we could test them or not, because we were testing the wrong. So we've actually came up, whether we can test them or not, we're getting every toxin out of every person. As he said, he's only seen this kind of result in his 40-year career a very few times. And Dr. Anderson, who's the toxicologist, says in his 3 decades of this type of work and 20 years of writing papers and protocols for detoxins, he has never seen this type of data come out regarding toxins. We literally got them all out. So how much? Now, the TP group is the group that only got plasma exchange, 5 of them. The protocol group is the group that had the lifestyle, the nutrients, the medications, IV and orally. And what we did is we looked at the 6 weeks numbers afterwards, and on the immune system, although you see the TP group did about the same as Kiprof's group did, about 10% higher, in our group it was between 25 and 50% improvement in all the immune system. In the inflammatory markers, they went down 10 to 12 and 1 to 50%, but in our group we're between 25 and 90%. We looked at the oxidative markers, and not only did they go down, as he showed in his paper, by 10 to 30%, our group went down 25 to 50%. And the cloth, though, was really interesting because nothing that I know of has ever been able to improve the cloth of protein, but in our treatment group, it went up by 30%. The NAD went up by 90%, and the beta-galactase went up by 70%. And this confused me, because I was like, Jen, that means we have more beta-galactase after we've done this procedure. It should be less, right? I mean, if we're killing off the siancin cells, it'll go down, right? He goes, no, Paul. Initially, after you do this procedure, you're killing all the siancin cells. It's going to go up, and then it's going to come down. So part of Jen's complaint about Kiprof's study, when he looked at the siancin markers, where they all came down immediately, he said he doesn't think that they're really killing off the siancin cells because there was no bump. We have a significant bump. So the heavy metal, let's talk about the toxins. Aluminum, very high probability that's one of the toxins associated with Alzheimer's. There has never been a way to get aluminum out of people. We got 100% out in our protocol, and it stayed out. We get arsenic out by 60%, the mercury out by over 50%, and the lead out by almost 90%. And compared to the TP group, they went down also, but our group was significantly higher in every area, statistically so. Like Jen said, when the numbers are this black and white, statistics are only a formality. The environmental toxins, went down from 40 to 60. The herbicides, the pesticides, all down by 50 to 70%. We're seeing the phenols, the phthalates, volatile compounds, and even the mycotoxins go down by 60 to 70%. How many people have treated their mycotoxin patients with a binder for years, and if you get a 30% decrease, you're good? Well, in 5 months, we lowered it almost 75%. These were exciting numbers to see. But the question is, when do they start coming back? Because the environment is filled, even with lifestyle changes, we should start seeing them come back. So what we decided to do is now this is our 2-week levels and our 6-week level. And the interesting thing that caught our attention is they got better between 2 and 6 weeks. So when do they start getting worse? That was one of the questions we had. So we started looking at it as well, and now the 6-month numbers are coming in, and they're even better than the 6 weeks number. Not only in the immune system, which we now see 100% increase, and the inflammatory markers are 40 to 70% dropped, even getting better, but even the metals that we don't have it because these people are just coming in, our group is just coming in, but these numbers are significantly lower. I was going to put the numbers here. I wasn't going to put the number here. June said I should, because all the numbers we've had with all the patients are coming in within a variance level that are relatively small. So he's like, Paul, all you need is 3 or 4 because we've already proved you don't need all 15. You only need 3 or 4 because they're all coming in with this margin of error. They're all acting the same way, which is great because it validates the data even more. So we're really excited about all this stuff. And in all these chemicals, the numbers were essentially better than even at the 6-week mark. So now we got that old car again. This is my favorite car. Found it in the barn. But what we can do with this program now is we can make this car run again. One of the things that we're struggling with and we're questioning is why at 6 weeks or 6 months are they even better than at 6 weeks? And our answer is that we're going to test out is we finally got the gunk out of the machine so the biomarkers and the biomechanics of the cell can work again. The mitochondria is working better, the detox pathways are better, and we're keeping them on these supplements, basically feeding them the gas in the air, and the body now is able to manage the level of toxins that it has and dropping it further, because the government is right. If the body isn't exposed to an overwhelming amount of toxins, it can clear them. The problem where the government's wrong is everybody is stalled on their toxins now because we all have critical high levels. It doesn't matter which part of the country you're in, you do your toxin testing, you'll see that I'm right. You're not going to be free. So I'm going to show you the data in a different format because everybody looks at information lower, and these numbers just keep getting better. So the red is what's considered the abnormal range of these levels. The green is the optimum range. And we see on the immune systems that the T cells, the B cells, and the natural killer cells are all, 2 of them, or one of them is markedly better, the helper cells. The suppressor cells and the natural killer cells, they're all trending in the right direction. And had I added the 60-day mark, or the 6-month mark in, they would all be in the green at this point, as I showed you, with 120% increase. Inflammation, they continue to drop, but they drop relatively quickly, and they stay down. The oxidative stress drops down into normal ranges within 6 weeks after the protocol. The longevity markers are all trending up, and you can see the beta-galactase is doing exactly what Dr. She said it would, initially going up and now trending down, and we're going to retest this again, but we do believe that what we're going to do is see this is probably one of the most powerful senolytics that we've ever introduced into medicine. The heavy metals, lead, aluminum, mercury, all on every patient coming down to normal ranges within weeks after the procedure done. Herbicides, the same way. Pesticides, the same way. Phenols, the same way. Phthalates, and I'm not cherry picking these. All the 200 biomarkers are exactly like this. I'm just showing these because these are the ones that I hope most of you have at least some relationship to. Even the volatile compounds are coming down on the slides, which I think are available to you. You'll see the reference ranges that we used so you can see where the government says is a good range and what we were measuring against. And the mycotoxins are also falling. We got through this protocol for quite a bit, and then we went, you know what? Let's go look at the PFAs, and let's go look at the microplastics. Let's do that, shall we? And those are being tested right now, and I'm absolutely sure we're going to see a marked decrease in all of these because, as Dr. Shi said, they're all coming down. It's just quite a question of how much. We now have our samples over in Finland being weighed on the microplastics, and we have the PFAs coming back within the next month. But PFAs are all protein bound in general, so they're going to come out 95% like the phthalates will. So this is one of the first times in medicine that we got an answer here, and it's an answer for everybody. This is me when I was 38. This is me now I'm 62. It's kind of like that old car and that new car. I really do practice what I preach. I take my supplements I exercise every day. I do my hormones. I've done TPE. I'm healthy. My biomarkers were abnormal. I wasn't completely clear, but I had pretty good heavy metal biomarkers, because when I came into this field, heavy metals were the only thing, and I was sure that my heart disease had something to do with heavy metals. And for 20 years, I worked to get them down out of the red to the upper part of the green. And within 90 days, now they're all essentially zero. I've never been able to and they stayed down. I'm the first patient, not in this study, but I'm the first patient through the group. And I can tell where the numbers are going to come in, and luckily every number has come in very close to mine. So in conclusion, this protocol is safe. It's effective. We believe it's permanent to this point, but our group has a plan for keeping them down, because there are ways to keep them down once they are down. And so we're going to be instituting that moving forward as well. But I want to leave you with one final thought here. We haven't been able to stop the government and the world from putting toxins into our environment. This is an existential threat that we're giving to our children and our grandchildren. But this is going to be able to give them a solution to be able to survive that toxic planet. I'd like to thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure.